All right, here we are. Today in Trades, I'm Jim Evans, brought to you by Bid Clips. We have a really exciting guest with us today. I didn't even know that she and they existed until I was at a trade show, Texpo, earlier this year. And I was walking through the show, just kind of meeting vendors and seeing what is out there. And I saw this giant sign that said, "Quit getting screwed." And I was like, what is that about? I'm like, I've been screwed before in business. I wonder what this is about. So I walked over to the booth and we met two lovely individuals, and they are with Quit Getting Screwed. Here's the book right here if you're watching on YouTube. It is actually a branch. We're going to talk about a little bit of the Subcontractor Institute. And it's basically a really progressive attorney. I know a lot of you don't turn it off now. This is a good attorney. This is someone we want to talk to. Karalynn Cromeens and her organization. It's a fantastic book. If you're a contractor, a subcontractor, and you work in the trades, this should be in your van. It should be at your desk. They had a big sign, and I walked over and I started talking with them, and they're doing some really fascinating stuff. So this episode is going to be all about Karalynn, and I'm going to ask the questions that all of us on this podcast are thinking, and that is, how do we stop getting screwed on some of these deals when we're working with contractors? How do we be better subcontractors by also knowing what we're doing? And how does that relationship just make for better business? And at the end of the day, happier customers and better relationships. So Karalynn, thanks for being on the show. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me. And thanks for that great intro.
It's true. I love what you guys are up to. At first, we get guests and I think, oh, okay, sure, they've written a book. I'll go check it out. And as I dove into the Subcontractor Institute, as I started going, I ordered your book right away. You really do a good job in the table of contents, starting to lay out just the process that so many of us never learn. So I want you to talk about, why did you write the book? Why are you creating this? What is the Subcontractor Institute? Give us the how this all came about.
Well, I've been representing subcontractors for years, and I grew up a subcontractor, and so they really have a special place in my heart as somebody that needs, is really good at what they do, but they don't understand the legal side, and they think that there's nothing, they can't sign anything bad, that there's a set of rules that will protect them. And sometimes, like in my legal career, I would get invested in a client and he would do everything right, but the contract would be wrong, and then we'd lose at the end of the day. And specifically in January of 20, I had a trial. I had a great client, and he couldn't afford, like halfway through the case, he couldn't afford to pay me. And so I just kept working because I believed in this cause so much. And he did a good job on the job. There was issues with the payments not being paid on time, and some things that he didn't do in accordance with the contract. And we took it all the way to trial, and he got his ass kicked. And not because he did anything wrong, but because of the contract he signed. And so I was just so mad at being at this position again, that I have a contractor who's doing the job right, who's doing everything right, but he didn't do all the little things that he knew he was supposed to do in the contract. So he lost. And so I was just mad. And so that's what it came out as. Like, I mean, they went out of business, right? That was it.
Gosh.
And so I didn't want that to happen to somebody else. And I realized at that point in time that coming in after you sign the contract, there wasn't anything I could do. And so I really needed to, because nobody was saying it. Nobody's out here saying that these subcontracts are so one-sided, and then everybody's just signing them to go to work, and it's fine if everything goes great. If not, they're going to cram those provisions down your throat. And that's what I see over and over and over again. And just nobody knows. They don't know, they're not written in a way you can understand them, even if you do take the time to read them. I mean, and then they say the same things over and over again. And it's just so far from, I think, where construction is supposed to be. And somebody needs to say something.
That is, first of all, thank you. As a small business owner for years, I worked with big contractors. And what's also funny is those contracts, even sometimes they just pass them down because that's what they have. And I'm very lucky, I've never been sued. I was able to kind of navigate it. But you're usually too tired to read all the fine print. You're excited you won the job. You're working on the relationship, you're trying to do the best you can. And I think a lot of us would love to have someone look it over with us, would love to help us prepare better. But, like most things, and the reason we have this podcast today in trades is to educate that you don't have to go spend thousands and thousands of dollars. Like I said at the beginning, not all, attorneys are only hard to deal with when you're in deep crap, when you're in trouble. I think what's so cool about what Karolynn's doing with what the Subcontractor Institute is doing is it's giving us the tools to go do it, to feed ourselves, to be able to take care of it. And sure, if you are able to prepare that, it certainly makes Karalynn and other attorneys' jobs a lot easier if we end up having to take it to a trial. And most of us on this call, you're not really in the trades if you haven't gotten into some sketchy situations where you have to navigate both relationships, scope of work, quality, And so I really want this episode to be a great takeaway for all of you on what are the common mistakes that we all make that Karalynn sees all the time when she's trying to solve in this. So that's my first question. What are the top 3 or 5? What are the things you see that makes you just want to face palm that we all do that you would first educate?
First one is bid and scope, right? Everybody thinks they're hired to do their bid. And so when they come into my office and they say, I didn't agree, I didn't bid this work. Why are they saying I have to do it? And I'm like, yeah, but the scope you signed to attach the contract, it says you'll do it. And people don't understand that they put their bid out there, but when they sign the contract, that bid goes away and it no longer describes the work that you're hired to do. Unless you sign off on that bid as being your contract, it doesn't come in anymore. And so at the very least, there's going to be some minor changes from the time when you bid the job to the stuff that's attached to the contract. And so really, really review that scope as if you were looking at a new bid to make sure that they match. And if not, don't sign the contract on a word that, oh, we'll fix it later. No, get the thing revised and say, hey, I can't sign this until it's right. And,
Yeah.
any exclusions, because if it's not in writing, it doesn't matter. And so the the fact that they told you they were going to change it down the line doesn't help you. And so really if we're going to be clear about the agreement, let's be clear and let's have it. So that's the first one.
So
The
bid, so
second thing,
bid and scope, and I want to ask you a few questions on the first one. So, being somebody who's been an estimator most of my life, and obviously it's no surprise, this podcast is brought to you by Bid Clips. Bid Clips, using pictures, videos, data points to bid jobs better, so that you can have a stronger scope. Customers don't feel like they were deceived because they know what you bid. Now, many of our clients are humongous that listen to this show. And to you, your bids are very detailed. They're very long. They're even outside sometimes of what the Big Clips scope does. But a lot of us are smaller. We're subcontractors. Our bid will scope from 10,000 to 50,000, somewhere in there. And for us, I want to talk about that a little bit because when I'm doing coaching with bids, I often tell people it's the first impression. And it needs to leave you a little bit of room. And that is just not to waste your time, waste the customer's time. How many of our clients say, I just want to know how much the bathroom remodel will be or how much the window package is going to be, and then we'll talk about a scope. So what's important to know for those of us listening that are Big Clips users, in your terms and agreements inside your program, when the customer accepts that bid, your verbiage in there, your contract should be professional. You should have a nice written contract that says this is a bid. The scope of work will be delivered at time of final order, subject to change, and work some of those things out. And if you need that help, please reach out to Karalynn and the team and hire that so that every time a customer hits reserve in the program, you're covered. So that's my little plug on that side. But I want to talk about the difference between bid and scope. You just said it, but where are some of the areas that people, real specifically, that people will miss between bid and scope? And when you go back to scope, should you use parts of the bid, or should you almost go completely over as an acceptance of the final offer? How would you tell a medium-sized company to navigate that?
and the most thing that I see in that type of situation is the just being as clear as possible, because the owner, the property owner, whoever's hiring you, does not know, right? There might be assumptions that they assume that things are included when they're not. And so what I tell my clients in this situation, explain what you're hired to do like you were trying to explain it to a jury. Because at the end of
Ah,
the day, if this thing goes south, that's what you're going to have to do. And so yes, this is what we said initially, but then it changed after a couple conversations. It changed, and here it is. Here's our final agreement. So
very
whatever it
good.
takes for you to clearly explain to them, manage their expectations on what's included, what's not, what happens if we dig into this remodel and there's, rotten boards. Obviously, that's going to be an additional charge. We need
Right.
to tell them, I can't see, I don't have x-ray vision, that this is a possibility. Because you could tell them on the front end that it's a possibility, then they don't get pissed when it actually happens. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Because they're going to use the expert. There's being like, okay, everything. There's not going to be anything unexpected. And we all know that that's not true.
And I want to share a little tip that's taken me 20 years of pulling my foot out of my mouth to learn. And if any of you on this call are learning or just getting into this business as an estimator, under promise and freaking over deliver. And also don't scare people away with your bid. Don't go in there and say, oh my gosh, I don't know if it's rotten. I don't know. It's a people, they don't really want to know. It's better to say, hey, Karalynn, we're looking at somewhere between, I hope you're sitting down, 3,000 and 4,000 worst case scenario. I have that in the bid for you. I covered as much bases as I can see without digging around and really getting my hands on this project. I'm going to do everything I can to save you money. And for Pete's sake, everyone listening, save them money. If I come in and I do it for 2,500, Karylynn's telling every single neighbor how great I was and how great the experience was. And if a waiter tells you 15 minutes, and we all know, and it's 20, you're going to hear about it. But if it's 14, you're the best restaurant in town. So please take that home. I love what Karalynn just said. Think about worst case scenario. Now, the bid is a blurry vision of what we're going to do. Your scope of work is your final. This is acceptance. A lot of our listeners are shower door installers. Okay. For your contractors, and then your contractors, we all know, don't share it with the customer. So in that scope of work, it's important to put, there'll be a 1/4 inch tolerance. Things are subject to change. Without backing, design may not be able to be executed. You have to just be careful to watch that stuff. So very good, Karalynn, this is so important. And then the second point I heard from you is good fences create good neighbors. And I think I've never owned a large contracting company. Thank God. I'd have way more gray hair and probably not be as happy about life. But hats off to all of you that are doing it. I believe that, I know when people that work for us, we have subs too. We use trim carpenters, etc. when we do a window package. When they're detailed with me, I appreciate them. It creates a good relationship. When we make a nice negotiation, we have clean fences. We know who's responsible for what. We have a much better relationship. And that's true in, marriage and life. When you just have good boundaries and you have good communication, that's all your contracts need to be. So don't be afraid any longer of legalese on your bid and your scope. If you want more, hop over to Big Clips, hop to the Subcontractor Institute. Please check that out. So I want to keep this train going down the tracks. I know there's more than that, and we don't always get to talk to an attorney for free. So Karalynn, what would be the second thing that you think gets people tripped up?
Change orders.
Change order. Oh, wait, someone does change orders? You mean things change in a project?
Like I did all this extra work outside the scope. I didn't ask for permission. I didn't get it approved.
Yeah,
I'm like,
people always have
get paid.
People always have more money too, right? I mean, it's
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
they're never mad about a change order. Let's talk about that, because that is, I had chills when you said change orders. That's something that just, it's like a blessing and a curse.
No, I know. And the main thing is like when you write a contract, or when you write especially for a homeowner, you want the whole thing to be in plain English so we can understand each other. And especially when it comes to change orders. And so like when I'm doing like a residential remodel contract, I'm going to put like, hey, I'm good at what I do. I can't see everything. There may be issues. And here's the process when that happens. I'm going to let you know about the issue that I found. I'm going to let you know what's outside what we originally agreed to do. And here are a couple options. And then also in the change order provision, I'm going to tell you it's cost plus 10%, cost plus 15%. That way we don't have to fight about how much is that change order going to be. They're going to know it, and here's all the different ways we can do it. And if there's not any, if there's only one way, we're going to talk about that one way. I'm going to tell you what it is before I do the work. That's the big thing, is that we tell them up front that, I hope there's not any changes, but there could always be, and here's how we're going to handle it. And here's the price tag on it. And we're going to have a conversation that this has to be done before I can do anything else. But the main thing is to don't just do it and expect that they know it's going to be extra and that you'll get paid at the end, because they're going to be completely caught off guard.
And that's important, again, for the contractor, that it's very clear, very plain, so that they can share it with their client. Because oftentimes the communication's like the telephone game we played in junior high. And remember, whatever you wrote down or put in an email, and again, I don't mean to be plug big clips, but that's one nice thing about our customer messages, all being in the same spot, is you can see everything that was said, every agreement that was made. And by using one area, you're not digging for emails, you're not digging for texts when things hit the fan. And so it's important to use programs like BidClips, et cetera, to keep everything organized, to have everything communicated. Really good point. Very good, very good. Let's move to what was I going to ask you? Oh, I know that you can't give business advice, or you probably shouldn't because you're really good at what you do. But is there a way you can like make it too ridiculous on a change order where you can get yourself in trouble? Like if I have a kind of a toxic job I'm walking into, and I'm worried there's going to be a bunch of them, which nothing hurts our businesses more than change orders. Yeah, they can make some of us some money. What's a reasonable amount? Is there anything that could be seen as illegal? Like if I say it'll be cost plus 50% when maybe my actual original was 20%. I mean, is there anything that gets you in trouble there? And I guess it's not on us if they sign it, right? I mean, how do we navigate that space? Because I know some of us just hate change orders and we want to avoid them and contractually try to avoid them that way as well.
Yeah, and I would just it's whatever the customer's willing to agree to, right? Whatever your
Mhm.
customer, whatever you feel is fair. And there may be some customers that give you that vibe that it's going to be more, and so you add more. And that's the thing is it's flexible on what I don't think you can change order a job to death as long as you're upfront
Right.
about
Okay.
before you do the work. You can't do the work and then ask for a change order.
That's
Um,
right.
and so yeah, just be honest about it. And like I said, whatever the client's willing to agree to, you that's what it could be.
Very good. Okay, awesome, awesome. And then when you do a change order, documentation, everybody just make sure you documented it was a change order, get a signature, and make sure that that's filed. So very good. All right, now what else gets us tripped up? I have a one that I want to get to at the end that I think is important. I mean, you might hit it early. So what's another thing that we make face palm moments?
Schedules. And
What's
whether
a
it's
schedule? You do
yeah,
things when we're supposed
whether
to.
whether
We're
it's in
we're
the
busy,
commercial
Carolyn.
side or on the residential side. On the commercial side, when you sign a subcontract that has a schedule, it's important that you make sure it's something you can do, because there, if you don't finish on time, you open yourself up to liquidated damages. That's a per
Ah,
day charge for each day you don't finish on time. So, and
wow.
that kind of rolls in with change orders too. If you get a change order that's going to extend your time, make sure that time is also put in the change order. Everybody just assumes, well, they should know it's going to take me longer.
Oh
And I
no.
say, even if they do, if it's not in writing, it doesn't matter.
It'll be
So
done by
that's clear.
2025. We'll
Yeah,
just have it done. We're going to do 5 years. We're just going to put that in there and slip that in and see what they say. But this is really important. I don't think a lot of us, I didn't know till I read your book. I didn't know that they actually can bust you for not being on time. Luckily, because thanks to my father, my grandfather, and my business mentors, I learned early on to give yourself enough space for worst case scenario. I just had that happen with the COVID supply chain problem. I
yeah,
told a customer 3 extra weeks, and guess what? There was a back order. Thank God. I'm still going to be up against the last 3 days.
yeah.
And if I had told that client 2 weeks like I normally did, they would be so frustrated. And even though it wasn't my fault. And now, if you're on a big contract and now you're paying liquidated damages and you're trying to get that from your vendor, good luck. So very, very good, obviously within reason, but I think that's important. I don't know if a lot of us know that happens, but I'd hate to find out the hard way.
No, and on the residential side, I mean, that's expectations, right? The difference between having a happy client and not, go
Yeah.
long, you finish early, you're the hero, you finish late, you're the zero. I mean, come on, and so,
Yeah.
just managing, if you, like I said, managing their expectations of, because they have an idea in their head of when it should be done. I'm not saying it's
Yeah.
reasonable. I'm not saying it's based on any facts, but they definitely have an idea. And if you're not within that idea, if you don't spell it out what it is, they're not going to be happy, which, leads to bad reviews and all kinds of things. So.
Yeah, very good. And I've learned the hard way. If you don't ask customers questions, you can't assume. And just because you tell them things, I'm a talker, they don't hear you. They'll be on Instagram. Ask them, what are your expectations for this project? Start there. They might say, well, geez, I'd just like to have it done in 2 months. And you were thinking 2 weeks. But
Yeah,
if you go in and you're like, I think I could have it done in 9 days. As soon as you say that, it's like telling your daughter we're going to Dairy Queen later at 3 p.m. You have just
It's
set yourself
definitely
on,
going.
you're MacGyver now, the ticking time bomb that you put on yourself. So I love that under promise, but just ask questions to your customers and say, when are you hoping to have it done? And sometimes their expectation are you create it. So I think that's really smart and very good. So what else? What else just makes you be like, oh my gosh, come on, pull it together?
Well, on most commercial contracts, the default and termination provisions. Okay.
Okay.
What a default is when you're not doing something that you promised to do in the contract, whether that's on the commercial side or the residential side. And so most contracts say you get a time to cure. So you're in default. Somebody points it out. They send you, an email, a text saying, "Hey, you're not doing this." That is a notice of default. It doesn't have to be sent by a lawyer. And so you need to respond to that right away to have the timeline of events. And especially on the residential side too, if you get into a dispute, having it all in one place is great. They're saying you said you'd be done at this date, you're not, you're in breach of the contract. Well, here's what's going on. A well thought out plan to document all of that.
Mm.
So, but if you don't fix the default, then it can lead to termination. And I think another big misconception is, well, if I get terminated, I just won't get paid and that'll be it and I'll be done. No, what can happen is when you're terminated, you promise that client to finish that scope of work for that price. If they have to go hire somebody else to finish that scope of work and it costs them more, you're now on the hook for that more.
No way.
Yes.
Wow.
And so that is something before you walk away from a job or are terminated that you really need to think about. More so on the commercial side because the numbers get bigger, but still on the residential side. I mean, I talked to in Texas, we have a process on a residential defect that you have to go through before you can sue a contractor. But one of the big things is that they get a chance to come out and fix it, and if they don't, they're on the hook for the difference.
Jeez. That can be
Uh,
that can be real costly because to a subcontractor, that's kind of like a change order. Last minute jump to another job to fix someone. That's not going to be usually bid well. And what an unforeseen costly error. See, everybody, look how much advice we're getting by just listening to this podcast. And I'm telling you again, go to Amazon, buy the book. It's a very inexpensive tool to have at your desk. And she did it. She wrote it so that all of us can understand it. It's like easy to read, bullet points, table of contents. And so
and that's my thing is that I
please
want
buy
you to know
it.
all these things are in there and what they actually mean and what
Yeah.
they mean in real life and the like, examples of how they play out in contractors, everyday business.
And the Subcontractor Institute is easy to sign up. I went and signed up. And it's nice because it's one of those things where you can continue to go through it. You also can plug through it as you're starting a project. And I just think it's important for anyone in the trades to be part of that. So please go visit both of those. You'll see the links down on YouTube below. Obviously, you can reach out to either of us for more of that. All right. So we have bid and scope. We just went through change orders. I learned a lot about two big traps there. And now we've just talked about schedules and termination and default. What's another item that really just can unknowingly trip us up?
Um, let's see here. Well, I kind of want to bring in, and I know it's not in the contract part, but it's another project that I'm working on because I think it's so important, is the collection side. Whether
Oh,
you're on commercial or residential, yes, you sign a contract and you go to work, but you deserve to be paid. And I just want to point out that every state has lien rights, and you didn't know what your states are, especially if there's a difference between residential and
mm,
commercial. And no matter what, follow those timelines
uh,
because that's a huge thing that I see that contractors aren't informed of. Like if you get a deposit, you're going to be paid on completion. You complete, you don't get paid. What are your rights? And a lien is so much more than you could have when just a breach of contract. It gives you an interest in the property that they own, and it's way more teeth. And I don't think enough people use it to their advantage. And
okay.
so I really think that's another part of this whole thing, knowing your contract, being clear, but also making sure you get paid because at the end of the day, that's how you run a successful business.
So you mean it's not like Dumb and Dumber where I can just be like, this is an IOU?
Yeah,
for
exactly.
$1 million.
For that Lamborghini I just
Yeah,
bought, you might want to
yeah.
hang on to that one.
You might want to hang on to this one. I feel like that's our business sometimes, because also for residential side, and I'm not as familiar with commercial. I did 2 commercial projects and said I'm not doing it anymore. But on the residential side, it is important because usually the contractors are friends with us. We go to beers with them, dinner. I travel with some of my contractor friends. It's easy to be like, oh, we'll square it all up. And sometimes they get screwed, and then they've got to figure out a way to pass that down and work as a team. And so it really works across the board. It's important. So there are technologies, everybody. I don't care if you use big clips or not. I would love for you to, but go collect that deposit easier, especially on the residential side. Make it easy for people to give you money, because that is an actual commitment. Sometimes people are like, yeah, I want to get it done. I've heard this so many times. Then we get out there and the spouse or the partner had already hired another company, and then you're awkwardly sitting there, and one spouse likes you, the other one likes the other one. But as soon as someone puts money in, they do 2 things. They read the bid, they've read it, because they're going to
Mhm.
put 1,000, 2,000, 10,000 down. They probably accepted what you've done, and that's a just good sign of faith. And then the second thing is it's cash flow, which is important, but it's just skin in the game. And that happened with my dad a few weeks ago. He had a plumber, and he's like, I'm just worried he's going to take the money and not finish. I'm like, well, he's not showing up. So maybe if we pay him, he might show up better. And the guy ended up taking forever anyways. He's a good friend of ours, but it was, and but cash moves the needle sometimes. So first of all, make it easy for people to pay you. Second of all, take Karolynn's advice. Make sure you know the lien rules in your state, know the timelines. That's huge. Sometimes you don't realize we've had our heads down that a month has passed. And if you miss it, and that would be a terrible feeling to do great work and then just have to write it off, and most of us don't need more write-offs. So
Exactly. And
let's
the
get
other
your
thing
money.
I see is that people are afraid to ask for payment.
Oh
And
my
and if
gosh.
and if you don't ask, you won't get paid. And sometimes you're not getting paid just because you didn't ask. And
Yeah.
then especially if you have your payment structure as like completion, like this level's complete, so I need this payment. I promise you, they don't realize that you're at that level and you need payment. So you
Oh
need
my
to
gosh.
request
Yeah.
payment. And then they'll review and be like, oh yeah, I see that that's done. I'll give you a payment. But don't think that their brain is seeing the same thing that you're seeing, because they're not. They expect that you're going to ask whenever you're ready. If you don't ask, you're not going to get paid most likely.
I'll go as far as to say most good accountants don't pay till they see something, because that's good money management. And I would encourage that. So you have to send those bills. And again, in big clips, you send a link. We need more payment. We need to accept more. And so it's really important. And very good point. I also
And
think,
that being said, and having those payment terms clearly spelled out in your
yeah,
contract.
yep.
Are we doing this? Is it a long project? Are we going to get paid every month? Are we going to get paid upon level of completion? Whatever it is that works for your company, put it in there and say, this is when I'm going to expect payment, and this is how it's going to work. When I reach this level, I'm going to send you an invoice, and then I'll send you the link, and then you're going to pay. And then you just
Yeah.
upfront that, hey, if I don't get paid within 10 days, I got to stop work.
Absolutely. Be disciplined. And really what it comes down to, and this is just for coaching for all of you listening, it's know your numbers. Don't end up with receipts in your van. I know we get busy, but we see I have so many dear clients that go out of business because they get bloated. They're not starving. They're bloated. Your indigestion kills companies, not
Yeah.
starvation. So know your numbers, know your contract, be disciplined, and if anything, make sure you hire a bookkeeper, an accountant, hire someone to be that person for you. So very good, Carolyn. That's fantastic. So
I mean, and just in a business sense, it's hard to be the salesman and the collector. So if there's somebody in your office that could do the actual collection, phone calls, whatever,
yeah,
it breaks it up and makes it easier. Because I've done both and it doesn't work very well.
good cop, bad cop. It's
Yeah,
important
exactly.
in businesses. And so good. I'm going to bring mine in here that I thought was interesting, because I've done this many times and I didn't even think about it. The personal guarantee.
Right.
Whether it's even at the bank and stuff, sometimes I'm just like, sure, no problem. I just sign off on the little line. Build yourself business credit, that's a whole nother podcast episode we can do, but that's part of it. But when it comes to these personal guarantees on these projects, Carolyn, let's talk about how those can get people tripped up,
Yeah. I
especially
mean,
smaller people.
there's some situations like if you have a credit card or if you're getting a line of credit that you're going to have to sign a personal guarantee.
Right.
But like a construction contract is not one of those things, especially. So a personal guarantee really only matters if you have a company. So your company does business, which is the way you should be set up. So if you don't have a company, you need a company, because if not, everything you sign is a personal guarantee anyways. So get a company, and that company protects you and your individual assets and your individual home and everything from the business that your company does. And when you sign a personal guarantee, even if you have a company, you're waiving that protection. So it no longer exists. So like you sign a subcontract and you get terminated and there's an overage, not only can they come after the company for failing to work, they can come after you individually. And so it's just really waiving any protection you get from a corporation or from being an entity at all. And that there in some situations you have to do it. Buying a house, buying equipment, yes,
Right.
those things, but not in a transaction where you're a subcontractor. It doesn't, or even on a residential remodel. I've seen, residential remodel, residential rebuilds with a personal guarantee that you're hiring my company, my company's going to do the work. If they're asking you to sign a personal guarantee, you want somebody else to take that project. You don't want it.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. And it was good to differentiate the two. Because I first saw it, my brain always goes to the things we consume. But how often do we just sign a contract that's laced in there and we didn't read it and take the time? And I'd hate for us to be stuck with that, and especially if you see, um, you know, um, especially when you see projects go south, and my heart goes out to all the families in Miami for the building collapsing and things happen. And sometimes we just think we're invincible, or a dry rotted wall falls in, or things come out of hinges. Things happen, and we have to protect ourselves to make sure that we're doing the best we can. And most all of our listeners, most people that are going to take the time to care about us or Subcontractor Institute, most of you are doing a great job out there. And so knowing your heart is good, which I hope it is. If it's not, get it together. But then secondly, just make sure that you've got that, because business, that's the reason that lawyers exist, to also protect us, to give us second chances to work through fairness. So please make sure you look at that and see. And so very good. What other topics or highlights are people going to come across through the Subcontractor Institute?
Okay, well, the Subcontractor Institute, I basically have taught all the 20 chapters that are in the book.
Mhm.
And there is like 80 free forms that are downloadable. The Subcontractors on a Institute is on a mission to teach people about the dangers of subcontracts and just help them run better businesses. So I made all the courses are free. There's like 80 free downloadable forms. I also have just started. You can upload your contract and have it reviewed. And so like we'll go through the contract, we'll highlight where these things are found and what they mean. So And here's the thing is that after you do that a couple of times, you can start to spot them in the contracts that you see. So, we can teach you how to do that. So it comes with a free 15-minute consultation virtually to go over your contract and tell you, yes, this is okay. Yes, my job is to inform you of all the risk. And so that's what we're doing. And then you can decide whether that's worth taking or not. But knowing it's there. And the other thing is that when you get a subcontract to sign, if you're on a commercial project, it's supposed to be negotiated. And so when you don't, you're just paying full sticker price for a car, right? You're not going to give them everything they want. And the other big one that I forgot to mention is the pay when paid clause, which is huge. It's not really so much in the residential one, but if you ever consider from going to residential commercial, know that every subcontract that's in existence right now that I've seen has a pay when paid clause, means the general contractor doesn't have to pay you until they're paid by the owner. And you as a subcontractor have no control over that. So, there's
Jeez.
some language you can add to your contract. I have the language for free you can add at Subcontractor Institute.
Wow.
Again, knowing your lien rights. But so that's everything that's at Subcontractor Institute now, but it will be evolving. We're going to start adding later this year the liens for all 50 states, and it's going to be just going to have the information there. I really want to help, and I really want to save businesses that if they don't do things right, they could go out of business.
Yeah, and there's nothing worse than a business who is truly trying to do good work the right way the first time, and then having, I don't mind if the wrong businesses go out of business. I really appreciate your heart there, and that actually just segued into one of my last points. So Karalynn also has a podcast. A lot of you drive around in vans and your trucks, and you listen to this, and we really appreciate that. And so if that's easier for you, I started there actually, and they were crazy enough to have me on their podcast, and that will be one of their episodes. But I listened to her first one before I even agreed to do this, and I really liked it. I love that sticker price analogy, and that's smart for a contractor, because if they're working with a good business, of course you start well. Things in life are negotiated, whether it's a salary or a vacation or scope of work. And so I thought that was a really good point. I think that actually was one of the things that triggered me into this. Is smart. This is really cool. It's Karolynn's not just here to like be a classroom educator you could learn on YouTube. She's showing you things about the industry that she clearly knows that are good tips. So consume the podcast. That's where I would probably start. It's not, they do a great job. get the book on Amazon.com. Again, Quit Getting Screwed, very inexpensive, easy to just click and put in your shopping cart. Have it in your truck, so it's just easy to see if you're a reader. And then lastly, the Subcontractor Institute. What a great way to go deeper with the book. Add yourself some contracts. And if you don't want to spend money on an attorney, do as much of it on your own as you can. And then, because we're all do it yourself, if we can figure out how to frame a home, we can figure out a way to probably put some of these things in place. And then lastly, if you're in trouble or you're worried or you've got projects going or things, Karalynn represents people all over the country. So please reach out to their group and ask them for advice, ask them for help, get an estimate, and I've had the chance of getting to know them very well over the last couple of weeks, just what they're up to. I'm a huge supporter of this movement for good businesses doing good things. So reach out to them. They'd certainly be the ones I would call. So, Karalynn, yeah, let's keep this conversation going. And I would love to keep watching the progress of the Institute and continue to keep pushing our clients that way. And is there anything else that you wanted to talk about today?
Oh, awesome. Thank you so much for having me. And like I said, we're here for, and the other mission that I'm on is not only to help the industry, but to take back some of the horrible things that people think about lawyers, because not all
Mm,
lawyers are that way.
right.
And one of the hashtags I started like a couple years ago is that lawyers don't suck. Not all lawyers. And so, a big part of that is our customer service. And we're
Yeah.
really set up specifically for businesses in the construction industry to be your partner in business. Don't just come to us when you're in trouble. Come to us when you're not in trouble so we can help you not get in trouble.
Yeah.
And it's all about preventative. We're also here if you get in trouble, but we can be more effective on the front end.
That's amazing. And honestly, you guys, Carolyn and the team, they are what you see. And I had a dinner last night with my, estate lawyer and stuff, which is never fun things. And he said it the best too. He's like, I'm here because I care about you, and I just want to help you guys make sure everything's good if things go bad. And I just think that's really important. And so many of us do have this, stupid stereotypes. And at Today in Trades, we're all about busting down stereotypes. The future of trades is going to be professional. It's going to be bright, and it's going to be a job that my two daughters are going to want to at least look at before they go be lawyers. So thank you, Karalynn. Thank you to
Anytime.
the team. Please give everyone my best. Again, everybody, visit bigclips.com if you'd like to use some technologies and some more insights today in trades. Thanks, the Quit Getting Screwed crew and the Subcontractor Institute, and everybody have a wonderful day.
Thank you so much.